Hi, welcome. This is,
Hello.
oh, go ahead.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I hope you've been in a lot of great sessions today. I just wanted to introduce our speaker who we are so lucky to have. He's one of the world's leading experts on lean accounting, and for over 30 years, he's leveraged his lean accounting experience assisting companies in their lean accounting transformations. Nick is the author of The Lean CFO, second edition, came out last year, and co-author of Practicing Lean Accounting, which came out in 2021. And he's a featured speaker at conferences in the United States, Europe, Asia, and Australia. Please help me welcome Nick Katko.
Thanks, Marcia. Uh, Glad to be here. Let's get started, and I'll just go over the very brief agenda, and this might look a little familiar to you. Uh, there's a basic direction, challenge, or problem. Traditional cost management practices basically don't work well in a lean company and can actually sometimes sabotage lean. The current state, which we'll talk about, is this really is driven by a financial view of costs and a top-down culture and the way cost is measured. So the goal, which we'll talk about, is to establish a process view of costs using the lean culture and lean performance measurements. And then the final part presentation will, how do you get there? Okay. And this is really, creating a lean cost management system is really like it's an experiment there. You're not just going to put something in and it works. You're going to have to learn how to do it. And also, uh, I'm going to show a video with a record video with my friend John Allen, who worked at the Toyota factory in Georgetown, Kentucky, and is going to offer a lot of insights on how Toyota manages its costs. So let's just get started. Uh, the current state is really driven by a traditional financial view of costs, which you see displayed here. Costs are looked typically as fixed and variable, and that's your total cost. And you have, the traditional financial equation, price or profit equals price minus costs. And so, most people know the market controls the price, customers dictate prices. So companies, if they want to make more money, they really got to focus on costs. But this financial view of costs leads to a certain type of culture. And that culture is basically where all of the cost analysis and decision making is done at the top, really between like senior leaders, owners, and accounting and finance. They're in their world and they're doing all their analytics. And there's not a lot of collaboration necessarily with other parts of the organization or especially operations. There's an element of certainty about what are the drivers of costs. And what that leads to is more of a cost cutting mentality. We have to cut our costs. Now, what does that look like? And I purposely put this in a PDCA cycle to, because that's the way people think about in terms of the people at the top making these choices, but it really doesn't work that way. So what's the plan? There's top-down short-term projects that with a direct financial return. And these are sort of dictated, like we're going to cut spending by 5%. We got to cut spending by 5% next quarter. We cannot exceed our budget next month. And so these are basically like orders that are given to the rest of the organization. And for example, operations is expected to execute that order. One of the problems there is that this gets into job performance as a manager, that, I need to do this or else my performance is going to be negatively impacted. Now, that may lead to some temporary short-term financial improvement, but because it's sort of short-term and dictated, it doesn't always stick. So what does that lead to then? More tighter controls, more reviews, more projects, and it's an endless cycle, and it creates a lot of, I would even call, dysfunction within the organization. So this is how traditional financial practice examples of how traditional financial practices can sabotage lean. For example, labor. The focus is on reducing headcount. Well, if you connect continuous improvement with reducing headcount, you kill continuous improvement. You are not practicing respect for people. If you focus efforts to find the lowest material price possible, what do you end up with? Excess inventory, poor supplier performance, and maybe even poor quality material. Controlling machine costs, the traditional way to do that is, top down, maximize utilization, run those machines. You end up with overproduction, excess inventory, poor delivery. Then there's my personal favorite, budgets and variances, where it's all about making the month. Now, we just got to make the number. Doesn't matter how we make them, we have to make them. And that often gets in the way of serving customers because it leads to a wide variety of what I would call dysfunctional behavior in an organization. There's the current state. So what is the target condition? What do we want to focus on in order to change our practices? First of all, it's about changing thinking. We need to take a process view of costs. The cost of any process is really based on how it performs. And any process has three types of work activities involved. You have the value-added work that goes on, you have some non-value-added necessary work that goes on, and then you have all the waste. And so when you look at it this way, now we have a different view. And what we want to focus on is how can we spend more time on the value-added work and basically less time on everything else. The breakdown of the activities between value-added and non-value-added in a process, really, it'll determine how many people need to work in that process, how many machines. So what we're changing here is going from the top-down view to the bottom-up view. So we now can focus on the root causes of costs. Operating performance is the driver of the costs in any company. So you focus on improving performance. How does this work? In the short term, if you focus on continuous improvement, you reduce the non-value added work and waste. And what you do is you create capacity. If you stop doing something, if you reduce wasteful activities or eliminate them, you create time. But that doesn't necessarily change the cost structure in the short term, because what matters is what you do with that capacity. In the long term, when you take that capacity and focus on more value-added work, now that value-added work is really directly impacting your sales and your revenue, and that drives the increase in profits. So reducing costs will yield more profits in the long run, but it's only based on the rate of continuous improvement and the rate of eliminating waste. What do we need? We need a collaborative lean culture. We need respect for people, a learning environment, problem solving, and continuous improvement. So let's listen to John Allen. I'm here with my friend John Allen, who I've known for many years. We both lived in Lexington, Kentucky. I live there. John now lives in Louisville. John worked at the Toyota plant in Georgetown, Kentucky, and he was actively involved in using the Toyota culture to manage their costs. And I brought John on because I really want him to tell his story. So John, it's all yours.
Yeah, well, thank you, Nick. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm happy to give you the story from my perspective. When I was hired a year before and had responsibility for training and development. So we had responsibility for making sure that the Toyota culture, as it was already established in Japan, somehow came alive in Kentucky. But the Japanese knew it would be a little different because of some differences. But the kinds of things that are important to us in our discussion in terms of culture is, first thing is, and probably the most important thing is, it's a culture of mutual trust and respect. That has a specific meaning, and it basically means that management has responsibility for the future and monitoring what's going on, and everybody else has responsibility for meeting the goals of the company and growing and developing. Along with that, and a very, very important part of it was something that we call accountability, and that basically means if I'm a manager and I'm accountable to understand what's happening in the future, and I'm accountable to understand that the goals and how they are and where they need to go. The employees, on the other hand, are responsible that make the product, are responsible for reliability of the product, quality of the product, and to meet the schedule. That took a lot of development. And as a matter of fact, it took us about 3 years before we really felt like that this whole culture of accountability and responsibility was in place before we ever even began to look at improvement at all. We had 3 themes that we launched the plan under, and those themes are important because the first one obviously was reliability, and that's what took the longest. They wanted to know that the cars that we made could compete with the cars made in Japan, and we achieved that over time. The second theme was a theme of productivity. And this is one where all the American managers held up their hand and said, "Oh, we know how to do this." And Mr. Joe was very clear about the fact that, no, you probably don't. But I want to hear what your plan. And so they brought back a plan and said, we can reduce cost every year by 7%. And Mr. Joe said, no. He said, that's too aggressive. I want you to only reduce them by 3%, and I want to make sure that everybody's aligned and committed to that and that they have specific goals to do that. Continuous improvement at that point became a standard because the employees were meeting and doing what we call Yamazumi, which is looking at all the processes and looking at where the process wastes are, and to make sure that all the waste contributes to the result of the 3% improvement. One of the nice things about Toyota is that we were already told nobody would be laid off. And as a result of it, if we reduced the process, then we would use that person constructively, but nobody was going to lose their job as a result of it. So that teamwork that was started at the Yamazumi boards and carried out through management and particularly carried out in ways that people were managed really led up to some rather significant productivity. In fact, in year 3, we actually turned profitability. and that's unheard of in the Toyota world. And so that was celebrated quite wildly, if you will.
John,
As well.
how did the teamwork work?
Yeah, well, the point is that everything starts from the operator and works its way out from that. The operator is the most important person in the process. And basically, we have to make sure that they're successful or the business will never be successful. So the whole culture of mutual trust and respect said basically, we want to listen and know and understand. But even more importantly, anytime there's a problem, we wanted to give them the ability to signal and say, I need a problem. And even more importantly, that somebody responds to it. And it was usually within 15, 20 seconds, somebody responded to it. And they were called team leaders. And they were deeply involved in helping team members understand problem solving and how to do problem solving. So all that went together to develop teamwork. The team members knew that the company was responsible for taking care of them, and they knew that they had to take care of the company. And thus the third theme arose, and that was the theme of cost. Now, we were doing well in cost, and as would typically happen in an American industry, and I've seen a lot of them, the leaders would sit back and pat themselves on the back. But Toyota knew that in a continuous improvement culture, that we had to manage this on a very, very timely manner, which means every day you think about it, every day you think about improvement. This even carried over into the cost department, and the cost department basically was enhanced and enlarged as a result of their analysis about how we can do better in cost. What came out of it was that they would send a representative to the shop floor every day to meet with groups and organizations, let them understand where they stood on cost, and let them understand, consistent with how they might improve their cost.
Who was sent out to the floor?
The representatives or the specialists from the accounting department. Okay. Yeah, that was part of their role to be able to go do that. So they go down to the shop floor and they have these discussions with people about, how costs are going, what they need to do to help, and how our goals being met, why. Developed quite a relationship with back and forth to the point where employees felt very comfortable to call the cost department and say, hey, next time you're down here, I want to talk to you about this or that, something they think that can be done. The real key to this is in the culture, in the Toyota culture, is that is one way that the cost department shows respect for the people out there doing the work. But the second thing is that they were responsible for the alignment and the commitment that the organization had to its annual goals, and then obviously to its strategic goals over time. Every day, yeah, go ahead.
Those goals, were these goals strictly financial or a combination of like financial and operational?
No, very seldom were they financial.
Oh,
yeah, no. What they believed was that the analysis of the financial position of the organization had to be translated effectively down to the shop floor. And so very seldom would you see a representative from the cost department come down and say, we got to get 3% cost out of this, or whatever the case might be. They would come down and say, here's how we're doing on this target. Here's where we need to be. Here's where we are. I need to listen to you to tell me what ideas you have in terms of how we can make that happen.
What were some of those targets, for example?
Well, there's always a quality target. That was first. And the quality target basically was very simple for every operator. Never pass on bad quality to the next process. So we achieved some rather significant goals in terms of the cars that arrived at the final quality confirmation. It was around 99%. They were okay. Now, a lot of the issues got caught because people have standard work. They know the quality they're supposed to receive. If they don't, then they can fix it. And that was what the and-on was for, to make sure that we never let things slip through that would be carried on. So every day they would meet and they would talk about quality, cost, delivery, morale, and would have specific metrics that they had laid down, and those metrics related back to the annual plan and what was expected to be accomplished in the annual plan. So every day they knew where they were. The other kind of thing, like quality, it's kind of a small thing, but at the end of the quality confirmation, there was a small area for fixing repairs. It allowed 9 cars. The whole plant shuts down because in the Toyota philosophy, we are wildly out of control. So they shut down the whole plant to see what's going on and why. We even had an early on a quality problem where the drive shaft had micro cracks in it from the supplier. And they found it and started checking cars back. We had over 200 cars that had micro cracks in the drive shaft. So the whole plant shut down and they brought in 20 or 30 people from Japan and they, over the weekend, replaced every one of those drive shafts.
Let me ask you, you brought up suppliers.
Yes.
So how did Toyota work with suppliers in terms of managing the supplier cost?
Yeah, well, there's an interesting story about that. I think, that might be helpful. The quality department got a bid from a supplier that had already been chosen for doing a new project. And the quality thought, wow, this is a pretty good cost. Well, shortly thereafter, the supplier plant called and said, uh-oh, we've left something out of our costs. And we can't make any money on this. And Toyota said, well, you can't stay in business if you don't make money. Raise your price, but also increase your commitment to get cost out of your process. And we'll have engineers in your plant in a couple of days and we'll start working on. So the suppliers represent about, in most automobile factories, about 65% of the cost of a car. So, there was a major emphasis on that. There were representatives from the purchasing department out there every day working with them. There was representatives from production engineering, and they ultimately developed the Toyota Supplier Support Center, which is to go out and actually do analysis and take the supplier to the next level. What's really important with that is that the suppliers knew that had a partner there. They knew that it was somebody that wanted them to make money, but also somebody who demanded commitment that they do continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Well, if you're at go ahead.
No, go ahead.
If you're at a supplier plant, one of the ways you get around a lot of this milk run, every 2 hours deliver product is to keep a lot of stuff in finished goods inventory. And immediately, when the Toyota folks showed up, they would say, "What is that?" And they'd say, "Well, that's our finished good." No. You obviously, your process doesn't deliver quality products. So work on those kind of things.
So John, we got to wrap up now, but what would you tell the listeners here, like the 3 most important things to consider in terms of the culture and costs?
Yeah, well, I think at the top of the list is accountability. And that is that people need to understand their jobs and be able to demonstrate them at a level of success, but not everything you design will go perfectly. So you have to have support for that. And that was the team leaders. So that's the first one. Second one is that team members know when they're not being treated with respect, and it does impact production. So I think that in terms of culture, those 2 things are the most important. The third one, which is just as important, but more longer term in view, is that every supervisor was required to set aside in the production schedule 40 hours a year for training of people. And that training included both their standard work training or job instruction training, but it also included training for upgrades for a person to get promoted. So this culture was one of these that, we're all in this together kind of thing. And that's so important in order to achieve some significant goals.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, John.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So let's do a quick wrap up and maybe we'll have some time. What needs to be in place? As John said, a lot of collaboration. Accounting needs to be part of huddles and improvement events. cost analysis work should be done in the Gemba, should follow problem-solving methodologies. Another key aspect is performance measurements. For example, and this is about cause and effect. There's operational performance measurements, and then there's like the financial performance measurements of how are we doing with costs. So for labor, if you focus measuring and improving productivity, your financial measurement of cost reduction is labor cost as a percentage of sales goes down. For material, you focus on improving flow, and your days of inventory will improve. For machines, focus on TPM and reducing changeover times. That will reduce machine costs as a percentage of sales. In terms of quality, you focus on measuring and reducing defects and rework. You reduce actual scrap cost and improve days of inventory. What you want to do is create this learning environment. Again, if you focus on the bottom, those aspects of improving process performance, and you move up, people will learn the linkages and the cause and effect. So I want to stop here, see if there's any questions. I also wanted to put this up as contact information. If you have any contact information or if any questions for either myself or John afterwards, please feel free to let us know. So I'm
Excellent.
going to see if
Thank
there's
you,
any.
Nick. John, I'm so glad you're able to join us. There is one question here in the
Yeah.
Q&A. If you could please share the lean values again. You had mentioned RFP, CI. What were the others?
Oh, it was collaboration, respect for people, learning, problem solving, and continuous improvement. And there is one thing I wanted to post. I'm going to put this in the chat real fast. If anyone wants to learn a little bit more, John and I are doing another live chat about this on Monday. The information is in the chat. You can join the chat live. It's going to just be a simple Zoom meeting. If not, I'm going to record it, and I'll be willing to send anybody a recording of the chat.
That's great.
Oh,
Thank you, Nick.
hold on. Can I elaborate more on the last slide?
Yes.
I'll have about a minute and 20 seconds. So if you focus your performance measurements on delivery, quality, lead time, flow, productivity, safety, morale, and cost, that is what drives sales growth. That is what drives cost reduction over time, and ultimately will make the company more profitable over time. No, my email is that my email? I don't even no, my email is nkatko, nkatko @maskell.com.
So Nick, can I add something
Sure.
quickly? Yeah, I think the real important thing to remember is that leadership doesn't manage the metrics. We manage the system, and that leads to results, and we lead people, and people trust leadership who can help them improve. So it's that cycle of things that works together that makes it powerful. And a lot of people like to focus on, what metrics do you measure? Well, again, we don't manage metrics. We manage the system that leads up to the results. And metrics sometimes can enable us, and sometimes we have to look deeper down into systems and how systems work. So just that quick comment.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the sessions. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye now.